and welcome to my book nook. For those that are new around here, the name's Rainy Barton. I teach music and I read all types of books, mainly thriller and horror, but I've started getting more into romance, fantasy, and all other types of genres. So if you're interested in that, please like and subscribe down below. It'll really help my channel grow. Today's video is one of my last videos that I have to wrap up 2022 because I realized that I hadn't filmed this yet and I didn't want to not do it because then I would have done quarters 1, 2, and 3 and not quarter 4, and that would have bothered me to no end. So we're doing my quarterly wrap up for quarter 4 of 2022. That will include things like my stats, like basically how many books I read over the 3 months, like how many pages I read and all that. And then we'll dive into my favorites of the quarter, my least favorites of the quarter, and then 5 books that I want to get to hopefully in the next quarter. And so with that being said, we're just going to dive right into the stats section first, and then we'll talk about the books that I liked, the books that I didn't like as a whole. And there we go. I will say quarter 4 was my worst quarter. I had a reading slump that lasted longer than I should have because I was pregnant. But it is what it is. Okay. Books read per month. I read 8 books in October, 3 in November, and 7 in December for a total of 18 books. This was definitely my lowest quarter by far. Same for the page count. In October, I read 2,038 pages. In November, I read 1,125 pages. And in December, I read 2,543 pages for a whopping total of 5,706. Usually, I read anywhere between 8,000 to 10,000 pages a quarter. So like I said, could have been better, but it is what it is. For audiobook hours, in October, I listened to 14.42 hours, November 12.51, and December 26.26 for a total of 53.19 hours of audio. October and November really weren't that different, even though I read significantly less amount of books in November. If we go into the genres, these are pretty much the same as always. I read 7 thriller, 4 horror, 3 contemporary, 2 romance, and 2 mystery. So thriller and horror are still always my top, but this year romance and fantasy might be making a comeback. That's all I'm gonna say when we talk about books coming up for the new year. As far as my ratings go, I had 2 2-star books, 3 3.5-star books, 3 4-star books, and 10 5-star books. So quarter 4, even though I didn't read a lot of books, almost all of them were 5 stars. And so I think that's great anyway. With authors new versus read from before, I read from 14 new authors and 4 returning authors. So the returning authors were Frederick Bachman, Judith Sonnet, Deanna Raybourn, and Riley Sager. I've already read a book from them before. The other authors, I'm not going to name all the new ones, but I read from 14 new ones. And then my people of color authors, I only read from 4 authors that were people of color and 14 that were non. Yes, I still acknowledge that's not great. I'm already making strides to fix that in 2023, as you will see in some reading vlogs and other things coming up soon. And then I figured it would be good to check in on my goals from the beginning of the year and see if I accomplished those. I set a goal for 100 books. I ended the year at 111. Heck yes. I said I would read more nonfiction and specifically said I would read 6 books. Only read 1. Know my name, Chanel Miller. Loved it, but that's not 6. I said I would stop buying as many books and I laugh, ha 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 ha, because they're not going to happen. I said I would listen to way more audiobooks. I did that and more. I slayed that challenge. That was fantastic. I said I would be more mindful of books that I read. I'm definitely mood reading now more with my TBR game, so I definitely accomplished that. I said I would read more fantasy and dark romance. Did not do that, but I'm already doing that starting this year. I'm already reading a couple of dark romance and fantasy books as we speak. And I said I would get specific on how I rank books. I think I have an idea of how I want to do it now, and I'm not going to have as many 5-star reads this year, but who am I kidding? Maybe I will. I don't know. I mean, I literally just read one of my favorite books of the year already, and you'll find that out in my January wrap-up, so this year's going strong. And now, let's talk about my 5 favorites of the quarter. But first, I'm going to tell you all of my 5-star reads first, and then for the quarter, and then I will show you my top 5. And yes, I do own all of these, but do I want to go into my bedroom right now and go get them? Because the bookshelf in my bedroom is the one where I house it all. No. So I'm just gonna pop them on the screen. So I have Ring Shout by P. Jelly Clark, Cirque Berserk by Jessica Guest, For the Sake of 1 and 2 by Judith Sonnet, The Weight of Blood by Tiffany D. Jackson, The Mother Next Door by Tara Laskowski, A Flicker in the Dark by Stacey Willingham, Love Light Farms by B.K. Borison, Praise by Sarah Kate, and A Man Called Ove by Frederick Bachman. Now, as far as my top 5 books go, This was not actually that hard. There were 5 that stood out above the rest. And so I'm going to go not in any order except for the last book that I say will be my favorite that I read for the quarter. So in the last 2 days of the year, I read A Man Called Uwe by Frederick Bachman. And I read that one specifically because my friends Neva, Brittany, Kelsey, and Amy were all reading it, and I had the FOMO. And I said, no, I need to prioritize books that I'm halfway in the middle of already. But of course, I can't have FOMO. Like, I literally can't do it. I'm an Enneagram 7. Like, FOMO is not in our nature. Like, we have to join everybody. So I joined them, and I read it in like a day, basically. And it was one of the most beautiful stories I've ever read. It's about this little old curmudgeon-y man that like loses his wife, and he is very depressed, and he hates everyone and everything. And then this new like family from some other country, I can't remember which country, comes in. The main character, the girl's name is Parvana. She's extremely pregnant, and they basically keep interweaving themselves into his life along with all his other neighbors, and like helping him realize that like life is worth living, and he doesn't have to be this curmudgeon-y old man. And it was a beautiful story. I loved it. A Man Called Otto, the one with Tom Hanks, comes out in like 2 weeks, and you better believe I'm going to be seeing that. That's why we all read it. And I had to put Ring Shout in here by P. Jelly Clark because this was the best audiobook that I've ever listened to in my entire life, and that alone made this reading experience infinitely better. Like, the characters, like, I loved all of the different, like, voices that they used for the characters. There were gospel songs in this that they actually sang in it. There was sound effects, like, it was just so good. Like, if you're gonna read this book and you don't listen to it with the audio, then, like, you're not getting the full immersive reading experience, in my opinion. Ring Shout was fantastic. I loved the whole, like, horror futuristic-y KKK, like, battle. It was so good. So good. Then we have A Weight of Blood by Tiffany D. Jackson, and I had never read a book by her either, and it was YA, and I wasn't sure if I was going to like it. It's a Carrie retelling by Stephen King, and I loved it so much. I know I've never read Carrie, so I can't really compare it, but I do know what the story of Carrie is, and I've seen the movie. This was so good. I loved it. It had a podcast element in it that really worked for me. Podcast elements in books do not always work for me. It depends on how they're done. But I liked how this one was, because it was basically a podcast after the events happening, basically talking about like the story and where they think that the girl ended up. And it was so good. Like, the representation in this was fantastic. I loved every single thing about this. It was like the perfect holiday, like October-y read to read, and I just had the best time with it. I highly recommend this book. Then we have A Flicker in the Dark by Stacey Willingham. This was a 5-star prediction for the year. It came out in January, and I didn't read it until November, and I loved it. I would say that this was definitely a perfect book for like a beginner thriller reader. Like, if you're a seasoned thriller reader, you're probably not going to enjoy this that much. I did still, because it reads really easy. Like, it's a really easy book. And even though a bunch of my friends predicted who the killer is, and I did not, because I'm terrible at that sort of stuff, even though now that I think about it, it was kind of obvious, they still all really enjoyed it because of the reading experience and how she writes. So it was still a great book, although it is predictable. But I had a great time with it. It was a good time. If you want a fun, easy thriller that like you don't have to think very hard about, then I would recommend this one for sure. And then my favorite book of the quarter, and honestly, I started this book in September. I don't know why I didn't finish it until the last week of the year. However, I had already filmed my best books of 2022, and I wish that I hadn't, because this book would have been on it. I loved it that much. And that was Praised by Sarah Kate, which is the first book in the Salacious Players series. And this one is where I discovered my love for an age gap romance between like this 21-year-old and this 40-year-old man. Emerson has my heart forever, and I just loved it. I loved their entire relationship. I loved the way that he was like so like wanting her and was so kind to her, and like would meet her family and like all this stuff. And before you get on me and be like, whoa, 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 like age gap, I'm not about that. Well, I am. And it worked for me, and you don't have to be the one to read it. I do. I loved it. I can't wait for the next book. I already have it on deck. Seriously, I just loved it, and this was such a steamy book, and I just had the best time with it, and I just love Emerson. I just do. He is like a book boyfriend for life. Okay, then we're going to talk briefly through my least favorites, which I only had 2 2-stars and 3 3.5 stars. I'm not probably really going to talk about the 3.5 stars. I'll at least say what they were. The 2 stars are the ones I want to focus on. So I'll start with the 3.5 stars. So I gave Not a Happy Family by Sherry Lapina 3.5 stars. I read that for my local book club's book club pick, and it was fine. It was just like your average thriller. I didn't really, it was like a rich people drama, which I should normally love, but I don't know, this one just didn't work for me as well. It was fine. The ending was a little ambiguous, which I do like. I know not everybody likes that. It was what it was. I also gave Killers of a Certain Age by Deanna Raybourn a 3.5 stars. I liked the plot being about the 60-year-old assassin ladies that are being like taken down, but I feel like there wasn't really a lot of plot and I didn't really care for what was going on. I just really cared for the characters, and that's why it still got a 3.5 stars from me. And then Night Bitch by Rachel Yoder. I read this for my local book club as well. I was actually the one that recommended it for that month. I thought it was going to be a 5-star read. It was not. It just was kind of boring and it dragged on, and I didn't really like the discussions it was having about motherhood. It was making motherhood this very negative thing. Basically saying you can't be a person outside of being a mom, and I don't agree with that at all. So it just wasn't for me. My least favorites, the 2 stars, had to be Survive the Night by Riley Sager. That book is not good. I don't care what you try to tell me. The vibes were there, okay? Like, it was rocking and rolling. I read it in like a day. I had a lot of fun with it. But if you look at it and dissect it for what it is, like the plot and the book and everything that happens, I cannot go above a 2-star. I just cannot do it. And I know some people might want to fight me on this. Like, I know Haley Hughes gave it 5 stars, says that it is not understood by many. But I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't look past it. It is what it was. And if you haven't been spoiled for this book yet, consider yourself lucky, because I already knew what was happening before I went into it, and I still read it, and sigh. And then my least favorite book of the quarter definitely has to be Normal People by Sally Rooney. However, I just saw a friend of mine on Instagram say that they also gave it a 2-star, and then they watched the show, and then they read it again, and it was a 5-star. I don't see that happening. I don't see me wanting to endure another read through of this, but to each their own. I just hated the whole relationship. I've already ranted on this a bunch in my worst books of 2022, so I'm not going to do that again. But I hated it. It's not a good book, and that's all I have to say on it. And then the last section is where I'm going to share 5 books that I would like to hopefully get to in quarter 1. Some of these I already have accounted for of when I'm reading them in this quarter. Some of them I don't, and so I need to figure that out sooner than later. The first book that I'm going to be getting to, I already have a vlog planned for this, is Got the Kana by Rue Next. And yes, this is the special edition cover, and just look at how freaking beautiful it is. Like, oh, that is gorgeous. I'm so excited to read this. I'm reading it in February for some special announcement that you're going to hear about on my channel next week. And I could not be more stoked to read this. Then we have, finally, Magnolia Parks by Jessa Hastings. I'm also reading this in February for some sort of vlog that you will see come out. I cannot wait to read this. I've heard it's a very toxic love story between BJ and Magnolia, and I'm just here for it, okay? I'm here for it. Then we have a book that probably everyone and their mother has read by now, but I have not yet, and it's on my 30 books before I turn 30, and I turn 30 in July, so I need to get to it. And that is The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. I do have a vlog planned for this. However, I think the vlog is actually coming out in April, but I'm reading it in March, so it still counts for quarter 1. I need to read this. Obviously, I know I'm behind, and I know it's probably going to be a 5-star and make me cry. Well, it won't make me cry, because I don't have a heart and I don't cry at books. But that's neither here nor there. And we have a book that I really want to read. I've been seeing it everywhere. It was Barnes & Noble's book of the year, and that is Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmis. I cannot wait to read this. I just got this with my January book of the month subscription, and I've heard it's fantastic. I've only heard one person say they hated it, and so, I don't know. I think this is going to be great, and that's all I'm going to say. And then the last one that I hopefully will be getting into this month so that I can read the sequel that just came out is Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. The sequel, the long-awaited sequel, Hellbent, just came out, so I feel like it is time to finally read this. And yes, I also own the paperback copy of this. And did I buy the hardcover copy so that I could buy the hardcover copy of Hellbent and have them match? Yes, I did. Am I extra like that? Yes. But I don't care, because one of my friends is getting my paperback copy for free. So, there's that. And I'm very excited. And I need to read this ASAP. And that is my quarterly wrap up, my last thing of 2022, so we can put that in the past and we can move on to 2023, where I've already read 2 books, technically almost 6, because I'm like 50% done with 4 other books and I need to get the ball rolling because you know how that goes. Well, I hope that you have a great rest of your day, and I will see you in my next video very soon. Bye!